Good evening, everybody. Welcome to another edition of ILEETA Live. We are 34 days out from the ILEETA conference, and I know we're all ready to hook up and have those nice conversations with everybody and some great learning. So we have Jim Glennon, our special guest here tonight, Joe Willis, Alexandra Nelson. I got it right. I was worried about that. So we're here to have a great conversation with Jim. And Jim, for the one or two people that don't know who you are, go ahead and tell us who Jim is.
Well, the short answer, I guess, is I'm one of the owners of Caliber Press, and I have been since we bought it in 2012, and we launched our version of it January 1st, 2013. So this is our 11th, 12th year. So it's going well. I'm generally, I introduce myself almost always the same way. I am the son of a Chicago cop. He was the son of a Chicago cop. In fact, I think, my grandfather and father's badge is from Chicago right up there, which I normally don't get to show because I don't normally do this from my home office. All I ever wanted to be is be a cop. That's all I ever wanted to be. And I'm the oldest of 9. I have 4 sisters, 4 brothers. I have six kids. I got 1 adopted kid, so it's like 7. I got a guardian. And so we have about 12 grandkids, 45 nieces and nephews, and all of those people that I just mentioned live within 25 miles of where I'm sitting, which is right outside of Chicago, which is why I can't leave this state. So it's way too many people. But the short answer really is I got out of high school, went to college, got a degree in psychology, graduated, did some volunteer work for a year, and then I came back to Chicago area because I wanted to be a Chicago cop. And they weren't hiring. So this girl I was dating at the time, I think she figured we were going to get married at some point, took out an application for one of the 500 towns around Chicago called Lombard, Illinois, which is a town of about 45,000 people, and DuPage County. It's 12 miles from the city limits. And so I was one of, about 65, 70 cops with the intention of going there, and then as soon as Chicago opened up, I was going to go to Chicago. I had a chance to go to the Secret Service at one point. But my 3rd year on, they made me a detective. And I really liked that. I really liked that. So I did that until they made me sergeant, and then they put me back out in the street for 3 years. And then I made commander or lieutenant, and then went back into detectives, and I stayed there for another 7 years until I went back out into the street, and I was commander of the afternoon shift. And retired after 29 and a half years. I started teaching defensive tactics back in 1991 with Bob Nicholas from Elmhurst, Illinois. We taught PPCT. That's what we were teaching. And but by that time, I was a hostage negotiator. I had a pretty good reputation of being a good interviewer and interrogator. I was our first sex crimes investigator, our first arson investigator. So I was really into that. But because of my psychology background, I really enjoyed the whole concept of dealing with people. And I realized very quickly, as much as I liked like the martial arts side and the DT side and the gun shooting side, learning how to, communicate with human beings was the key to the job. And I think that's why they made me a detective so quick, because I was able to get confessions. And then when I was a detective, I went to Reed interrogation and went to FLETC and several other places and kind of honed those skills. So I started teaching that for the Illinois MTUs. And during that time, I got a master's degree. I went to Northwestern University. I started teaching staff and command college with them. And then somebody from Caliber Press saw me teach the staff and command at Northwestern in 2001, and asked me if I wanted to come on board and teach street survival, which, Brian, you guys remember street survival back, I mean, if somebody, I remember getting in the 1980s, getting survival selections. You used to get those like 4 times a year. Remember that?
I do. Yep.
Yeah. And they had the schedule on the back all around the country and all the products inside. And I never in a million years thought I'd own that company. But so I started doing, I quit everything else and just did that. And my sister and my wife both got jobs with Caliber Press right after I did. And they were working out of their office. Neither one have ever been cops. And they were working out of their homes, their home offices. And then when I was ready to retire in 2009, we had, by a fluke of circumstances, we had a chance to buy Caliber Press. And I put my foot down and I said to my wife, I said, not doing it, don't want to do it, have no interest in owning a business. I've been a boss for 18 years. All I want to do is teach a couple times a month and, wait to die. And I said, that's it. I'm not going to change my mind. So we bought Caliber Press. And what my wife did, and I really do give her 98% of the credit. I give myself 2. My sister won maybe at least in 98, 97%. But Lisa, when she was working with Caliber Press, came up with the idea to expand it beyond street survival. And she had everything figured out. I had been teaching. Brian, you and I taught around Illinois and all that. We ran into each other several times. And so I was teaching a lot of communication courses, de-escalation, leadership. Some of the other guys were teaching things, and she wanted to put that all together. And they said no, they didn't think it would work. So she actually quit Caliber Press in 2010, I think. Started her own business while I stayed with Caliber. And within 2 years, we bought Caliber Press. So it's pretty wild. And now I work 1,000 times harder than I did as a police commander, I'll tell you that.
Usually what happens when you retire, from what I hear anyway.
Yeah, no, I have no idea what that means. I don't know what it means. But we're busy. I think we did pre-COVID, and last year I think we hit pre-COVID numbers again. I think about 235 in person and over 100 online live webinars. And because of COVID, and my daughter's got it, she works for us too. That I have 15 full-time employees, 12 of them are related to me. It's pure hell. And my daughter's brilliant in broadcast communication. She had a degree in it. So then what we did is we flew all the instructors in, and in front of a green screen, we recorded most of our programs. So now we rent programs like we're Amazon. It's pretty wild. It's constantly moving. We hired a CEO right before COVID. Scott Burmaster used to be with Force Science, and that's where we are now. Just chugging along.
What a ride! I remember. Yeah. I think it was 2002 or 3, somewhere around there. I seen you in the Street Survival back in somewhere out here in Colorado. I think for the first time with Bob Willis, I believe. Does that sound right?
Not with me. Bob was gone by the time I was. Dave Smith. I could have been doing with Dave Smith back then. Yeah. Bob Willis, and I'm embarrassed to forget his name. Florida. I know him well. I can't remember his name. Expert witness. He just retired like 2 years ago. Who am I thinking of? Anyways, they were doing it in the 90s, and then there was only 4 of us doing it in the 2000s. Now I have about 15, 16 instructors, and I think 6 of them do street survival.
All very outstanding instructors. I know most of them, not all of them, but phenomenal instructors. So Alexandra is our first time guest host, and I'd like to kick it over to her for our first question. Go ahead.
Awesome. Jim, it's an honor to be here with you today. I started back in 97, and, Jim Glennon's name was a name even then. So I appreciate being here with you. I mentioned your longevity in law enforcement and mine, in the sense that we've seen a lot of different stuff over the courses of our careers, obviously. And I'm wondering what you've observed as what you would see as the prevailing issues that keep recurring for us. We're all really bad at history, and it seems like right now everybody's feeling like this is the worst time ever, but I'm not sure that that's really true. And there's probably some issues that have cropped up over the years that maybe we haven't sufficiently taken care of. So what have you observed as kind of the most important things that we should be paying attention to, so that maybe we eliminate them as issues for us internally as police officers?
Well, the overriding issue that I recognized very, very early on in my career is a lack of investment in police agencies. And I'm not talking about the citizens who generally really like their own police departments. In Lombard, people really like us. But there's a lack of investment from a political government standpoint.
Yeah.
I mean, we don't invest in training enough. I mean, everybody here is so pro training that, there's a massive bias, but I mean, that bias exists because there's a need. So the lack of investment in that has always been a critical issue. Training has always been like the bastard stepchild of law enforcement. If all of a sudden we have budgetary issues, what's the first line item that we cut? And it's yeah. And then, besides that, I wrote an article that came out today. Yeah, it did. It came out today where I address the fact that it kind of plays along with this issue that the politicians they don't seem to have respect, not just for their police agencies, but for the law anymore. You know what I mean? I mean, I call them out. What spurred me is I'm sitting next to a pool in Florida, and my mind can't shut down. So, I try to write at least one article a month, if not two. But I saw this article. I think it was in Law Enforcement Today or Police One, and the Hawaiian Supreme Court basically acknowledged they're going to ignore the United States Supreme Court when it came to the Second Amendment in Hawaii. And I mean, and this isn't a Second Amendment argument. That's not the point. But they said Hawaii isn't like the rest of the states, so we're not going to pay attention to that. And they quoted something from the TV show The Wire, and then they even mentioned the Constitution's out of date. So why would we pay attention to that? That's the Supreme Court of Hawaii. So you have that. You have sanctuary cities. You have states and cities who outright say we will not work with the federal government. There are states, and mine's one of them, who create laws to ignore other laws. It's, they make a statute saying ignore these statutory laws. So and so my view, speaking to cops, and we're going to we're going to Atlantic City next week. That's usually our biggest street survival of the year. And the police officers around the country are basically saying the same thing. I don't know what they want from us, and often it depends on whoever the political body is controlling that prosecutorial office, or, the politicians controlling a particular area.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm in Cook County, Illinois, so I'm familiar with the challenges that we're experiencing here.
Yeah.
What would you suggest is a approachable way for our officers to be dealing with this? Because politicians we can't change, right? I mean, we're going to be dealing with the people who run our agencies and run our cities as they get elected or as they get hired. But our people need good skills like on the ground to figure out how to manage these things. And I think it comes down to good communication skills and relating to people as people. And I think those are things that you said a little bit about, perhaps in some publications that, are out there somewhere. So what could you suggest to our officers out there about just managing things on a day-to-day?
Well, it's an easy question to answer. It's hard to implement. It's really, it goes to leadership. I wrote about this too a few years ago, and I said when everybody was screaming, systemic racism, and we teach an implicit bias course. We teach de-escalation. I'm not afraid to talk about race at all. But I never have been. In the 70s, when I was in psychology, the people I went to college with were of all different ethnicities and races, and that was post Martin Luther King. So we were all openly talking about race, and we all had the same goal. Let's stop talking about race. Let's look at quality of character, content of character, like Martin Luther King said. But everybody jumps on this. Well, and if you don't agree that there's systemic racism, then you're a racist. So in my classes, or when I'm talking to the public, when somebody says, and including my 10,000 relatives I have, and I've had arguments, with some of them, is okay, systemic racism. First off, explain what that means, and in which part of the criminal justice system is racist. And they go, well, the criminal justice system. Oh, okay. Well, there's 3,200 counties in the United States. So that alone is 3,200 different criminal justice systems. There's 18,000 agencies. 12,000 of them are local. Half of those local agencies have less than 10 police officers. So you can't lump them all in together. So my belief has been for a long time that one of the biggest systemic failings, the two main systemic failings, if you want to really label 18,000 agencies and all these different criminal justice systems, is a lack of leadership and a lack of a commitment to training. So police officers, Alexander, this, Brian, you know this, they look to their leaders. I mean, you guys remember, you're working, let's say you have three bosses on your shift. And you go to work and boss A is working and you're thinking, oh, I'm going to kick ass tonight. I'm going to go out. I'm going to be proactive. I'm going to stop cars. I'm going to do my job. Right. And then the next day, boss B is working and you go, I'm not doing anything. Because why? You don't trust that second boss. When I first got on the job, this is a great piece of advice. Anybody watching should write this down. It's a phenomenal piece of advice. I was on a night shift. I'm 24 years old. I just got off probably my second arrest for the night. And one of the older officers calls me on the radio, meet me over at the Kmart parking lot. So at 4:30 in the morning, I drive over and veteran officer sitting there reading a book, not like Street Survival. It was more like 50 Shades of Grey or something. And he shuts the book and he looks at me. He goes, kid, let me give you some advice. I said, go ahead. I'm eager. And he says, remember this always. They can't shove it up your ass if you're sitting on it. And I didn't even know what the hell that meant. But I found out I had sergeants who told me to slow down. One sergeant told me I wrote too many tickets when I was a rookie. I was, like all rookies were out there stopping cars. He says, we only want 20 a month. Why are you bringing in 30? That's 10 more opportunities for citizen complaints. I don't want citizen complaints. So the difference between a culture or an organization that is effective and one that fails, it all comes down to culture. And bosses cannot be victims of their culture. They have to create that culture. And that culture absolutely have to have a foundation of trust. Mm-hmm. And then you have to have supervisors who are smart, they're knowledgeable, they continually try to educate themselves and better themselves. They think outside the box. They go above and beyond what the minimum requirements are. Man, when I worked for bosses like that, I couldn't wait to get to work. And then luckily I only had a few years I worked with the other guys and I'm just like, I'm just going to put my head down. I mean, right? You guys experience that?
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
You said you couldn't wait to get back to work. I still believe that this is a very noble, honorable profession to get into. For all those listeners out there that are on the fence, thinking about retiring early, getting out, what's some advice that you would have to them and also people thinking about getting into law enforcement? It's not a bad job to get into.
No, the book you held up, Alexander. It was the first book I wrote, Arrest and Communication. When I signed those at seminars, if it's a rookie cop, I always write the exact same thing. I wrote, "Welcome to the world's greatest profession." That's what I write. I still believe that. But I talked to police. Somebody wrote Dave Grassi. Thank you very much. It was Dave Grassi. Yeah, Dave. And I know Dave well. I don't know I missed it. You guys make me nervous. I still believe that. But when we did a survey 2 years ago, I think it was maybe 3 years ago. And we had 10,200 responses to a survey. That's huge. That's massive. And the question was simple: would you recommend law enforcement as a profession? And it made national news. It was on Fox News. It was on CNN. Only 7% said yes. 7%. About 15 were unsure. The rest were no's. So then the follow-up question was, if you said no, you wouldn't recommend. And you guys can, it's on our website, what was the reason? And we gave them about 7 or 8 different reasons, and you can check as many as you wanted. But the 3 that were consistently very, very high, way up in the 80s probably percentage, was lack of trust in management, fear of liability, including going to jail, and political rhetoric. So, how do you combat that? I'll give you one more real quick one too. I won't tell you the name of the city, but it's a large Midwest city, and it's not Chicago. It's a large Midwest city, and we were doing a recruitment retention class up there. And so I'm teaching this course with Gordon Graham was with me, and Ed Delmore. He's chief of police down in Gulf Shores, Alabama at the time. So we were doing it. I don't teach anymore, but we teach it. I don't. And we do 2 days showing great videos, talking about selling your culture, where to go, how to use social media, And there's 3 guys, three males in the front row taking notes like crazy. So at the end of the day, we have questions. We save the last 2 hours for questions and answers and panel discussion type thing. And I walked up to these 3 guys in front of the whole class, and I said, "You guys have taken a lot of notes." Yeah. Do you agree with most? And you go ahead and say if you thought anything. They go, "No, this is fantastic. Everything in here is good. There was nothing negative about this." And I said, "Great." I said, "So now I want to ask you this question. If you do everything we talked about and you start getting inquiries, and some young person is thinking about joining your police department, and they walk up to the average police officer in your city just standing on a corner and say to that officer, 'I'm thinking about joining your agency.' Before I got the question out, the 3 recruitment officers for this big city broke out and laughed. And I said, what are you laughing about? I know why. He goes, there is not one officer in this agency that will recommend joining this agency. And I'll tell you right now, that agency is in deep, deep, deep trouble. They are massively below manpower. So it really comes down to the culture you have, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. So you've written extensively. The article that you mentioned today that came out, as I was reading through that, one of the links you can click through to get to is some of the stuff you've written on ethics. And you've written extensively on ethics, ethic training, training it throughout the profession. There is, without a doubt, some challenges training in that space. And as you pointed out in your article, you're not getting the request for it like you used to. And so this is a 2-part question. If you can, for the audience, kind of expand on why you think that is, and then what can we be doing about it in the mid ranks, the sergeants, some junior lieutenants and below. What can we be doing about it?
Well, the first answer is easy. The reason, and I think I put it in that article, the reason nobody asked for it is because it wouldn't be well received at all, because there's way too many leaders in the public that are massively unethical. I mean, just look, listen, whether you're a Democrat and you're a Biden supporter, or you're a Republican and you're a Trump supporter, you think the other side is unethical. So half the country is constantly thinking the other half is unethical. We see, and I gave a couple of examples in the one article where I was called to go to a Northwestern state, and I went in there, and they were a great group, and I taught the one-day ethics class, like I think 3 or 4 days in a row. And they were there because a police officer took a cup of coffee that they weren't supposed to take. But at the same time, what I found out is, the chief took a free golf membership at a private country club. And
then rationalized it, right? And that
and
was
rationalized it as, well, that's my way of, communing with the community. I mean,
yeah.
It's just, I mean, we all know this. I'm not sure I can use a foul word on here, but cops are bullshit artists. You can't BS cops. You just can't. So, and I gave a couple other examples. And the second part of your question is, what I say in the leadership courses, and it's just because I have decades of teaching these now, and for years I became a freak on biographies on successful business leaders, military leaders. I read, a bunch of books about different companies that were really successful. And I'll tell you, I'll recommend, I got a lot to recommend, but one of them is Michael Abrashoff. Anybody out there who's a sergeant, anybody who's a supervisor should get this book. And it's called It's Your Ship by Michael Abrashoff. It's Your Ship. He took the lowest rated ship in the United States Navy, and within 18 months, it was the highest rated ship in the United States Navy. And in it, he said that nobody asked him to do that. In fact, there were roadblocks when he tried to make the changes that were necessary. So he made a very, very interesting comment. I can't remember if it was in a book when I saw him lecture. He said, pardon the pun, but you don't want to make waves in the Navy. So nobody cared that it was the lowest ranked ship. And the biggest risk to my career was to make changes to fix that ship. And to me, that just hit me when I first read it. That's government. That's government, right? Yeah. So when I teach these courses, I get sergeants all the time come up to me and go, look, I agree with everything you're saying, but I got a lieutenant, I got a captain, I got a deputy chief, I got a commander, whoever, and blah, 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 they suck. So, what do I do? I say, you take care of the people, and the hierarchy below you. You take care of them. That's your main job. My first day, when I made sergeant, I drove to my parents' house. And my dad, he was a Irish guy, and he quit being a cop when I was about 7 because he didn't want to live in the city anymore. And he was making more money 2 days a week covering pipe than 5 days a week as a cop. So, the guy never got a day off. And he pulled me, and he was not he didn't talk emotion with me. If I struck out, he didn't ask me how I felt about it. He didn't yell at umpires because he wasn't there. 8 other kids to take care of in a job. But he pulled me aside and asked me why I wanted to be a supervisor. And it shocked me that he asked me that. I said, because I want to take care of those people, and what I said is I want to, make the department better and all that kind of stuff. He goes, your number one job is to take care of your people. Your number one job is to take care of your people. Mm-hmm. And if you're not ready to do that, then give the badge back. But then he added this. He said, I guarantee you that in the very near future, you are going to be torn between doing what's right and what's best for your career. And I said, what? And he said, something's going to happen, and the brass is going to say you're going to back us up, even though you know what the officers did was right. What are you going to do? I go, I'll back up the officer. He goes, you better think that through. Because if you're not willing to do that, because that's going to derail your career. And I said, I'll back up the officer, but really didn't think it would happen. Within 2 years, it happened. Within 2 years, it happened. And then it happened again a couple of years later. So the second part of your question is, nobody is more important in the whole organization than line level, right? But among the command staff, nobody is more important than first line supervisors. They set the tone. They create the culture. If you got toxic culture above you, put an umbrella over you and the rest of it. Stop that crap as best you can from getting down. And that takes guts, and it takes knowledge. You have to study the leadership craft. You can't just, hope that, God's going to come down and anoint you with leadership powers.
I think way too many people think that they get in a leadership position without any training, without any skill set. They don't read books, and it shows. And I was telling somebody this weekend, an officer from another state who was struggling with some of these things, and I said, your leadership may be toxic above you, but who are your troops going to look to, and who are they going to want to emulate when they become a leader? Exactly. And they'll want to be you, not you, but they want to emulate your qualities and not the qualities of those people that are above that umbrella. So I mean, I think that's we're in some trying times, but if the sergeants and the leaders are doing the right things, we're going to have some good cops coming up the ranks and be good leaders in the future.
Yeah, you hope so. I've been kind of glancing over a couple of the questions here, and one of them is, why do police officers not train even when they're provided the ammo? Somebody else, I'm not sure how to get there. Here it is. How would you suggest we train officers to lower the intensity of potentially tense situations? They kind of play hand in hand. I've made this joke for a long time, but let me just stay on leadership for a minute. When I personally do the leadership classes, and I think a couple of the other guys have followed suit, is I go up to whoever the highest ranking person is in the room, and a lot of times it's many just jurisdictions. In fact, I did the Georgia's Chiefs Conference, and that's where this one story comes from. So I got all chiefs, assistant chiefs, deputy chiefs in there. And what I do is I walk up to one of them and I just ask this very simple question. Were you a successful law enforcement agency last year? And it catches them off guard. No one ever answers quick. Their eyes bounce around. And the most common response I get is, I'd like to think so. Or I believe we were, or something along those lines. Nobody's ever looked at me and go, no, we stuck. Nobody's ever said that. So what I always follow up with is a real simple question. How can you prove it? Mm-hmm. And they stare at me and they go, well, what do you mean by success? I go, no. You said you're successful. You tell me what it meant. Why was it? And then I get things like this. Well, we didn't have anybody killed. Oh, great. Well, the best way not to get anybody killed is don't hire any cops. I mean, the reason you exist isn't for police officers not to get killed. It's fantastic that we have that goal, but that's not the reason the agency exists. So, and then if they talk stats, then I go, okay, does that mean at the beginning of the year you sat down with everybody and this is the statistical number we want to reach? Well, no. Okay. And then if they mention, the burglaries are down or whatever, then what I follow up with is, okay, so then if they go up again next year, who's going to get fired? And everybody just laughs. So I was doing that in the Georgia thing, and I'm walking around and I get to this one chief and I look at him, and by then they all know where I'm going with this stuff, right? And I look at this chief, I go, were you successful? And he goes, do I still have a job? And I go, yes, you do. He goes, then I was successful. And all the chiefs broke out laughing because he said out loud what they were all thinking. And he goes, look, it's not that that I'm not a good chief. That's not the point. But the average chief down here is chief for like 3.5 years. And we want to make that 3.5, 4, 5 years. That's what we want to do. So if the boat ain't rocking, we're not going to rock the boat. I'm not going to do, I'm not going to do anything that's going to bring a political eye on my agency if there's no political eye on it. So what we always come down to is this. In government, our job or our goal isn't really to succeed, it's to avoid failure. I mean, think about that. They can't shove it up your ass if you're sitting on it. Right? And then think, when I taught at Northwestern University, the 10-week staff and command, they used to bring me in the first week and I would do something the first week and then the last week. And one of the things I would look at all in most, they're all somehow command level, right? And I would ask them, tell me the truth. Why are you in this class? And they would all say the same thing. Well, I was hoping to pick up some things and make me better and our agency better. And I would look at them. I go, BS. That's not why you're here. They'd laugh. What's your absolute number one reason? The primary motivator to be in this class. And then almost all of them would say, my resume. Okay, great. And your chief, we spent 10 weeks here and all this money and all this time. What's the chief's primary reason to have you? And they would go, the chief's resume. To say everybody went to FBI Academy, everybody went to, I said, great, fantastic. So at the end of this 10 weeks, and you learn all this new stuff and they put an investment in this, and you go to your first command meeting and you say, I want to talk. This is all the interesting things I learned. These are the changes that we should make. What's going to happen in that command meeting? Everybody will yell, just shut the hell up. Things are working fine around here. I mean, think about that. I know it sounds doom and gloom, and it's not quite as bad as I just said, but not far off. I own a private company, and I was kidding with you guys earlier, but it's the truth. I've never worked this hard in my life, and I work the least of everybody. I put the least effort in than everybody else. My wife is sitting in her room right here. She's got some probably Housewives TV show on or some kind of crap like that, a bunch of whiny human beings. But she's on the computer, probably talking to the vice president of sales, who is her sister. I was on the phone right before I got on here with our CEO like 3 times about something. What we know in the private sector, my joke is, for 30 years, I got a free paycheck every 2 weeks. No matter how much I sucked, they pay me the exact same amount of money. And no matter how hard I worked, they pay me the exact same amount of money. When you're on the private side, you're constantly thinking about how to stay ahead of the curve, right? We go, this is a class that is needed. I have instructors calling me all the time. I got this great class. We probably take 2% of those instructors because they don't really have that great of classes. They think they're great, but they won't sell. We're always updating. We used to say we updated Street Survival every 3 years. We now update Street Survival every day, and that's not an exaggeration. If a new video came out, if a new issue came out, boom, it's in the Street Survival program. But on the government side, it's easy to be a lazy cop. It's not only easy, it's advocated for in many agencies. So, and Cook County is a perfect example of it, right? When you look at the number of stops the number of raw stops that the percentage went down in Chicago, and as the enforcement goes down, what goes up? The crime rate, the violent crime, right? It's as bad as it was in 1992, 93, 94. Right? And they're still blaming it on COVID. So it's easy to be a lazy cop. It's even easier to be a lazy supervisor. Mm-hmm. Right?
I want to circle back to something. Oh, go ahead. I interrupted you.
I was just going to say, when I made sergeant, 3 sergeants I really liked. I really liked these guys. But my first day, they sat me down and they said, no more traffic stops. Take the radar, don't put a radar in your car, because then we used to put them in and out. Don't go to anything unless guys back you up. The main thing you have to do is get ready for roll call, take in the stats, and do the statistical analysis at the end of the month, which is nothing more than math. That's what they told me to do. And then if you do that, you'll be on top of the list for lieutenant.
You said something, and everybody heard it loud and clear. I think we all had the same gut reaction that I had when I heard you say it, which was, we're more concerned with not failing than we are with succeeding in the public sector. And I just draw a stark line under that, because my entire career flashed before my eyes, as you said it. And I thought to myself, yes, that is 100% true. That from my own experience, the majority of time, it was everyone around me, myself included, often more concerned with how do I hit the compliance levels? How do I check this box? I got 244 hours of annual training that I got to get all these people through. How do I do that? But I will tell you, I've pushed against the systems. I think many of our listeners have, in trying, and tying your second point into this, trying to be entrepreneurial about how I do business, even in the public sector, because it's imperative that we do it. It is imperative that we think like entrepreneurs, as the sergeants, as the administrators, the lieutenants and captains, even as those line level folks, the adjunct trainers, right? Your advice on how do we buck that system? Because still to this day, I've been doing this for as long as I have, still fighting against it. How do we get more concerned entrepreneurially about success than avoiding failure?
Well, it comes down again to you, as I always say in the leadership classes, do not be a victim of your culture. What you need to do is decide what type of culture you need, create that culture, cultivate that culture, maintain that culture, and for crying out loud, lead that culture. Because, when somebody says, well, we give them ammo, they won't shoot. Okay, you're right, because they're probably from a culture that you do the bare minimum. If the state says you only shoot twice a year, we just shoot twice a year. We're not preparing these guys for gunfights. We're not doing anything like that. So I'll tell you, and this is going to be a little bit of a plug for Caliber. So, but bear with me. There's a reason I'm doing it. These are what you just asked me. How do you be entrepreneurial within the agency? Well, because I was so invested in training back in the 90s. I made sergeant 91. I'm really dating myself, but 91 I made sergeant. 93 or 4 I made lieutenant. So I was already teaching a lot. And then by 2001, I'm teaching with Caliber Press. So every week, at least once a week, I would bring in, remember, VHS tapes, right? And there weren't that many available back then. So we would, as trainers, we trade them, right? We would trade them. And I remember buying a VHS quick copy machine. So, I remember bringing it to an actual class one time with a bunch of blank VHSs and begging the guy that, but what I would do is at least once a week, show a video in my roll calls. And my favorite method was just to, first off, I'd write down training points, but I would just put it in. And it was so hard to edit because it was VHS, but I would put the video in and just say, you guys tell me what you think. And then when it was over, I go. And they would just start yapping. And I would just shut up, because by listening to how they interpreted what they saw, I realized where our gaps were in training. Like, I remember one guy was shot in the back and somebody says, well, Tennessee versus Garner says you can't shoot people in the back. And I went, oh, man, no, it doesn't say that. Do you believe we're not allowed to shoot people in the back? And he goes, yeah, isn't it against the law? And I got like 3 or 4 other cops in there going like this. I go, so if somebody goes like this and they turn their back really quick, you can't shoot them. And they went, oh, I never thought about that. Because all the training is static. Think about this. And we show this really well in the street survival program. Wait for your target to face you, right? Stand in the 7-yard line, you square off with your target, wait for your target to face you, boom, shoot. So wait for your target to face you. And in the book you held up, Alexandra, I start the book out with the Kyle Dinkeller, case, where that guy spent, 35 seconds loading an M1 carbine, and Kyle didn't shoot until the guy pointed the gun at him, because his brain was programmed that that's the threat, not the loading the gun. And he should have shot him right in the side when he was loading the gun, but he didn't, because his brain is programmed to, that's when you shoot. So from an entrepreneurial standpoint, doing that is great. So what we did, so I'm not with Caliber, right? And we would get guys walking up to us all the time. Can I please have that video? And when I worked for Caliber, not owned it, they told us you can't give anything up. Now, I'll be honest with you. I did. Like, you got a thumb drive? Go buy a thumb drive. Get your ass back here. I'll wait here for you. Get a thumb drive or something. But it became a massive pain in the ass. I mean, if you got 300 people in the class and get 200 of them walking up with thumb drives. So I get emails. Please, I was in this class. I got to show it to my sergeants, or I got to show it to my guys. So what we have just launched, and I wish I had something, but you go on our site, we just launched something called the Vault, VAULT. It's a subscription base. It's our first time doing this. And in it, we're sitting there right now, are over 250 videos. About 200 of them are edited mostly by me of real police citizen interactions, from de-escalation and communication corrections to a lot of use of force. And what I do is I edit these down. People give them to us, or we find them, or whatever. I edit these things down to be used in roll calls. So the longest I know is 18 minutes, but there's only 2 that long. We've got several that are under a minute and a half, but they probably average about 4 to 6 minutes. And in it, we show it, then we freeze frame it, we caption, we have training points in there. And some of these 5-minute videos, you can use them for 2 or 3 weeks in your roll calls. There's so many points in there. If you go to Caliber Press, caliberpress.com, I show a couple of examples, a case out of Sacramento. So here's kind of my point. We let agencies use this thing for months for free because we wanted them to find the glitches and stuff. And one of them walked in our office and told us they loved it, the great thing, and a couple of issues we fixed. And he said, okay, here's the deal. How much does it cost? And Lisa looked at him and says, how much do you think it costs? He goes, $5,000 a year. So here's the deal. What we did is we have priced it per agency, not per office, per agency. So if you've got an agency of 10, I think it's like $300 a year. Don't quote me on that. You can go online and find it. And everybody in your agency has 24/7 access to that, to every single one of our videos. Because what I believe is when officers have some downtime, and what we're hearing already is these officers, see, that's the thing. The officers want training if they're from the right culture, right? So if they're in their squad or even at home watching these and they go, holy crap, come in the next day and say, Sarge, we have to watch this video. This is what we're hearing from the agencies that have it now. And we just launched it like a month ago. And so it's doing pretty well. But that type of stuff, the proactive type training, if you get sued, the first thing they ask for is, let's see your training records. And if your training records are, yeah, we did the bare minimum, but if you're really proactive, the attorneys protecting you are going to love it. So I probably went a little long there, but that was my point. You can be entrepreneurial. You can think outside the box within that box.
Absolutely. Nope, that answered the question perfectly. One of my favorite quotes is the perfect harmony between creativity and strategy is the box, given the box it's supposed to think outside of. And that's what you just did. Get the box, figure it out, because we have these rules, the left and rights we've got to play within. But what you spoke to, I think so many of us can identify with. If you're an ILEETA member, chances are you already kind of know what Jim just offered. But I hope you took that as a little bit of inspiration. Lean into it. Go fight against that system, figure out what the minimum is, and then figure out how to break that ceiling and get out of that box.
Yeah. Somebody just posted, maybe our CEO might be on, I don't know, but somebody just posted a link to the vault. Check it out. There's no, if you don't think you'll like it, then don't get it. But the people that have it so far love it. So.
It may seem super obvious to, I don't know, to some trainers, maybe it's not, but in all the conversation we're having about supervisors and their leadership potential, I'd like our trainers to remember too, that they play a critical role in that culture shift and in that ability to change thought patterns and help their officers figure out how to navigate these strange waters that we're in right now and kind of separate the things that they can't control from the things that they can influence and the things that they can make a difference on. So do you have any words of wisdom specifically for the trainers in that capacity too?
Yeah, push the envelope. Become a pain in the ass. Be a pest. Seriously. I mean, I had guys coming up to me to the point, I wasn't a ranger officer, but I was in charge of that. right? And the range guys kept complaining about the 2 master range officers that we had, who were friends of mine, and they were sergeants, but they wouldn't change anything. And so after warning them for like a year, like I remember the guys, somehow, I had the stats about most gunfights happen within 5 to 10 feet, right? I said, how much training are we doing 5 to 10 feet? And they go, we can't score 5 feet. I go, we don't have to score 5 feet. But see, their brain was always, well, anything we do, we have to score it. I go, no, you don't have to score it. So these young range officers are pushing me, and I finally fired those 2 guys and gave the range to like 3 young guys, and they built walls, and they were, to the point I'd rather have to pull them back than to push them on. You know what I mean? So they're bringing car doors down, simulated rain. I mean, it was just, they're, so for one thing, again, you got to go back to the supervisors that elicit this type of input. You want to push that. I'll tell you, our department, when I retired, I think was 75 officers. And when I brought in at first it was PPCT, and they still do it, but I added to it because I was in martial arts and we did some other things. We wound up doing, and they still do, as far as I know, DT training every single month. But what I did is we had 75 officers. By the time I retired, I think 22 of them were defensive tactics instructors. So we had enough guys on each shift to do it every month for 45 minutes. And then we still did 1 or 2 days a year that was 8 hours. And then one of the guys came to me, one of the range guys came to me and said, because we did simunitions, but simunitions is expensive, right? And it's a mess. And we can only do it once a year. And the guys were saying, and you can only go through about 2 scenarios each. I said, yeah. So they talked me into buying airsoft guns for every officer and masks. So the range officers and the SWAT guys and the DT guys got together on each shift. And if they had enough manpower and it was slow enough, they would cut out a half hour and do school shootings or, searching buildings and searching around buildings and stuff. And they did it all on their own. And the only thing I told them they had to do, and I talked to the commanders about this too, is document everything you do. And, the biggest issue with the airsoft guns right away, the memo I put out is no shooting each other in the ass just for fun, because, that's what they're going to do. And they did, but that kind of stuff. So the young guys coming on, how the young guys coming on now, if there's not a computer in their car, they don't know what to do. Right. Mm-hmm. So the young guys come on, if the culture is already shifted for very pro training, then it's easy. But then you have to put responsibility on them. And I believe this. I've been saying this for years. If you're a police officer, you should join a boxing club or martial arts. So if you are in a fight, you don't freak the hell out, because we're not going to train you well enough. And you got to keep yourself in shape. You got to keep yourself in shape, because if you're out of shape and a fight does break out, you're going to lose all, anaerobic exercise you're not used to. You're out of oxygen in 30 seconds. You guys all know this. So responsibility has to be on the line level officers themselves too.
I'm talk about videos in the video vault. I'm kind of baffled at how a lot of even trainers don't know some of the historical events that we've had in law enforcement, such as the Newhall incident, the Miami shootout, Onion Field.
Onion Field. I was just in Bakersfield, Brian. I was just in Bakersfield, and I looked up where that happened. I almost drove over there.
Really?
Yeah, I was just there a couple of weeks ago. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Oh, no worries. The one I used a lot early on in my training was the Trooper Coates video. And I think a lot of trainers don't really know how to use video properly in a training environment. Can you, just talk to the trainers out there? What's the best way to use videos when you're training?
I'll give you some advice on that. It's the same advice I give that I give trainers. And this is going to sound weird at first, but I'm old enough to remember when Indiana Jones came out, the first one, Raiders of the Lost Ark. Didn't even call it Indiana Jones. It was Raiders of the Lost Ark. And it just for grins, I just looked this up. It was weird. I've been talking about it for years, and I just looked it up a couple of weeks ago. But I remember Ebert and Siskel. Remember the thumbs up, thumbs down guys, right? Roger Ebert and Gene Siskel. And one of them, Gene Siskel said, he talked about the rock rolling down at the beginning of the movie and all that. He said, that gets your attention right away. That makes you right away go, if the movie starts out this way, I can't get up. Because that movie it started the way most movies ended, with a cliffhanger, with a and then the James Bond movies, now they all do that, right? So what I always told my trainers, and anybody who's been to a caliber press class knows we do this. We hit them, like, sometimes even before the introduction, we just show a video, and we always pick a interesting video. Everybody goes, wow. So when I edit the videos, like all the videos in the vault, and again, the ones I've edited, there's over 200 of those. And one more time, and Scott, if you're out there, put up the Sacramento case. Put a link to that. So, and this is a good example. It's still sitting on our YouTube page. You can link it through the article. It's the Graham decision or something. But here's a good example of it. This guy's on a train with a knife, and he's threatening people, and the police get called, and everybody runs off the train but one guy, and they get the one guy off, and so the only one left is the man with the knife, who is obviously agitated as hell, and he's banging on the wall, and he goes, "Don't run up on me! Don't run up on me!" He's got this big knife. All right, and they talk to him for 5, 6, 7 minutes. When he stands up, they beanbag him. He charges, they shoot and kill him. That's like 5 minutes. But the video starts with a 10-second clip of him getting up, charging, and bang, 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 them shooting him, going down. And then say, good shoot, or something to that effect. And then what I do is I do a brief background, and this is what I suggest you do. Do a brief background on what they're about to see. They're going to see, right? And say, on this date, this happened, came in, boom, 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 boom. And then, and again, we do it for you. But if you want to buy the software that I bought to do it, you can, when it's hard to hear what they're saying, you can put the verbiage up there. And then at one point, you could stop it and go, "What would you do right now?" Right? Like one of the officers says, if he stands up, less lethal. And when he stands up, they beanbag him. So you could stop it there and say, all right, what would you guys do here? Would you say that? Would you not say that? Right? And then I always make a point that, oh, by the way, this guy had like a quarter of a second to make the decision we've talked about for 10 minutes. Right? On and on and on and on. And then bring up the important aspects, which is what people talk about now, intervention, de-escalation. And that's part of that one. Because I say, look, they proved beyond a shadow of a doubt they didn't want to shoot this guy. They begged him, put the knife down. But in it, I go, why is it important to put the knife down? What's the big deal that he's got a knife? And then I say, because a knife is a deadly force instrument. But what's your goal when somebody's got a knife? And when I do this live, kids will say, they'll yell, well, the knife's got to go down. And I always say, well, why does the knife got to go down? What's the big deal? He's got a knife. He could stab you with it. What's your best defense against an edge weapon? Distance and barriers. Did they have the opportunity for both of those things? And so put that in the video. Because what if they just walked out of the train and shut the door? Now, I'm not criticizing the officers. I'm not criticizing them. But in it, I say, de-escalation is now an expectation and intervention is a legal requirement. Right? So there's 3 officers there. What if one of them just said, why don't we just get out of here and shut the door and wait till he calms down? And in that video, I say something like, your goal when you're dealing with somebody who's agitated is to calm the situation down. Ordering them to put the knife down 40 times is not going to calm them down. And again, not to disparage the police officers, because they proved they didn't want to shoot him. And the shooting's a good shoot because he was trying to stab him when they shot him. But so you want to bring up all these different points, but get them at the outset that this is something they want to see. Then put something in there on why they want to see it, besides just to see somebody shot. Because I put in there's the Graham decision actually is it going to be considered in this? And I talk about state statutes, or the state statutes. And what I do, Brian, is I break apart the Illinois statutes based on that case. And my argument is they could be charged with manslaughter or homicide based on Illinois law. So just imagine how many conversations you can have with just that one video. So grab them, tell them why they need it, and then stop it and ask pertinent questions at this point, and then show them the whole thing through. So that's the way we do it. It works really well. That's why so many people come up with sticks and go, "Can I have the video?"
All good points.
Yeah.
We're coming up on top of the hour, and I wanted to just kind of go round robin. Joe, any final questions, thoughts, comments for our super guest here?
So many, but that would take us into a whole other hour. And so I won't ask the ones that everybody should find you and ask you at ILEETA at the conference. But I will ask, you're teaching at ILEETA this year. And
yeah, Wednesday afternoon, I think Thursday morning or Thursday afternoon. Yeah.
Yep. And if you can, tell us a little bit, what are you teaching, and what can we expect when we come see you?
A little bit of what we just talked about. How do you avoid what is avoidable? Right? Even if it winds up being a legal shooting, let's use the 20/20 vision of hindsight. And people argue that, you can't do that. Graham says you can't do that. Well, Graham said that in Title 42, 1983 case. It doesn't talk about trainers and bosses and officers. They can't go back and go, well, what about some other options to stop it here? And by the way, where does intervention and how does intervention kick in? So I'm going to be talking about that because those court cases right now are coming fast and furious, and every jurisdiction is different.
Absolutely.
It's a mess. It's a mess. There's another one, and we'll talk about this. I won't go into it now, but there's a case out of Clear Creek, Colorado, where a state trooper who just showed up and didn't do anything has been arrested for failure to intervene. And he was only there a very short period of time. So those are the kind of things we're going to talk about.
Yep. Avoiding the avoidable, that unintentional escalation. Thank you so much. I'm looking forward to checking it out.
Cool.
Alexandra.
I don't have any follow-ups because, again, I think that we would be here for at least another hour, but I'm really looking forward to seeing you at ILEETA this year, Jim. Thank you so much for spending your time with us this evening.
Well, thanks for the invite. I appreciate it. It was an honor to be asked.
Very insightful. Great information. Just want to put out there that the conference app, which is sponsored by Caliber Press, by the way, just went live today. So everybody can get on that app and figure out where you're going to go. And it's always a challenge. You got 6 classes going on at the same time, and which one do you take? So jump on that app. And thank you, Jim, for getting that sponsored and that valuable tool for the conference. I've got one more question, probably the most important question of the night. Tomorrow's February 14th. Have you got Lisa something?
No, because my wife is one of those perfect women who hates Valentine's Day. She hates it. She hates it. So, yeah, it's the only reason I actually married her, because it saves me money once a year. Mother's Day is a big deal to her. Birthdays are pretty big, but she hates Valentine's Day. So, yeah.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, hey, thanks for joining us tonight. We all learned a lot tonight. Wish we could have spent one more hour with you and picked your brain a little bit, but we got to be mindful of everybody's time here. And Joe and Alexandra, thanks for joining us here tonight. And everybody, we will see you in 34 days at the ILEETA conference in St. Louis. You all have a wonderful night.
Look forward to it. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.